Adelaide Foss slouched at the breakfast table, her cheek resting in one hand as her other hand poked at the X on her toast, with fingernails that were just a bit too long. In fact, Adelaide's nails were alarmingly pointy, much like her ears, which she kept hidden behind twin black braids. At the front of the dining hall, the headmistress, Mrs. Merryweather, gave the breakfast lecture. It was an ordinary day at Madame Gertrude's school for girls, which, for awkward Adelaide, meant it would probably be a bad one.
Posture is of the utmost importance in the civilized world, for a true lady must be recognized as such before she even utters a word.
Mrs. Merryweather droned. Adelaide heard the sound of fabric as someone slid across the bench to her. Without even looking, she knew it was Becky Buschard, one of the older girls.
What's the matter with your ex?
Becky whispered.
Not bloody enough for you?
There was a smattering of muffled giggles as Becky slid back to her friends.
Ow!
One of them softly howled. Adelaide pretended not to hear, though it hardly did any good. In truth, she possessed a freakish ability to hear absolutely everything, sometimes even a mile away.
A woman without balance in her step is a woman without balance in her life.
With her hooked nose and her long black gown, Mrs. Merryweather looked like one of Widowsbury's crows. Adelaide often wondered how she blinked at all with her silver hair pulled back in such a tight knot. Adelaide stared off to the right, doing her best to ignore the faces made at her from the left. At the end of her table sat Maggie Borland, with 2 feet of empty space between her and the others. Nobody ever sat close to Maggie. Her wild brown hair made her look like Medusa, and her jumper was always stained. At the moment, she seemed wholly absorbed in her toast, which she carved into smaller and smaller pieces for no apparent reason. Every once in a while, she stabbed an egg, pounding the tines of a fork into a useless sculpture with each blow. Adelaide was fascinated. But then Maggie glanced up, and Adelaide hurriedly looked away. There were rumors that Maggie had tossed the teacher through a window at her old school, and that the teacher only survived by catching onto the sill. Adelaide didn't know if this was true, but she kept a safe distance all the same. This proved difficult as Maggie was always in detention whenever she was, and Adelaide was in detention every day.
When greeting new acquaintances, a lady must be reserved with the initial affection.
Mrs. Merryweather went on. Adelaide turned her attention to the other girl she saw in detention on a daily basis. Beatrice Alfred. Beatrice, simply put, was weird. She looked like a porcelain doll come to life. Pale and tiny, with unnaturally dark eyes and short black hair topped with an oversized bow. She was in the 9th class, but she was only 7. Adelaide wondered if this explained Beatrice's peculiarities. Weren't really smart people supposed to be kind of odd? Even now, Beatrice appeared to be whispering to something in her front pocket. Who does she think she's talking to? Thought Adelaide with a shiver.
Which brings me to my announcement.
The headmistress continued.
Today we are expecting the arrival
Adelaide's breath caught in her throat.
of a new
Please don't say what I think you're going to say.
librarian.
Oh no.
She is not from Widowsbury, but I assure you she has many references, and she's quite safe. She will, I hope, be joining us shortly, and I would like for you all to be on your very best behavior.
Adelaide's palms began to sweat. This, under no uncertain terms, was very bad news.
But there's one more thing.
Mrs. Merryweather's eyes narrowed. Her jaw clenched. She raised a long, bony finger and pointed. Here it comes.
You,
Mrs. Merryweather hissed at her. She did the same
you, and you.
to Maggie and Beatrice.
You 3 are to be isolated from the others. You will be separated from the other students. You will be separated from each other. I will not give you any opportunity to frighten away this librarian before she even begins.
Adelaide heard snickering behind her and felt her face grow hot.
Don't think I've forgotten for an instant what you did to the others. The incident with the chair,
The headmistress glared at a scowling Maggie.
the little present you left for Miss Elise,
She paused at a cowering Beatrice.
your campaign of terror against Miss Elizabeth.
She watched Adelaide for a long time. Adelaide reddened. I was only trying to warn her. I'm not the one who put the spiders in her bed. Not that she didn't deserve it.
No, I haven't forgotten. And for that reason, I will make an example of each of you. I will show our new arrival that you can and will be controlled.
Some of the other girls began to laugh.
Quiet, ladies. Do not reward these children with your attention, for that is what they are, what they will always be. Rude, spiteful, wicked children. Their unwillingness to adhere to the vision of the great Madame Gertrude, may she rest peacefully, well, I dare say it scares me.
Yes, but you scare everybody.
Miss Alfred, I want you to move to the small table at the far right corner. Miss Borland, to the table in the far left corner. And you, Miss Foss, to the table in the front corner.
The dining hall erupted with the cackles of 300 schoolgirls. And this time, Mrs. Merryweather made no attempt to silence them.
Scary children, scary children, scary children.
Sang Becky as Adelaide marched to her seat in humiliation. Yes, it was going to be a rotten day. New Librarian Day always was. Librarians were supposed to read a lot and help you find the books you wanted. But all they ever did for Adelaide was force her to write punishment sentences until her hands turned red, or yell at her for sneezing, or make her sit as still and quiet as she possibly could, with nothing to distract her from all the little sounds of the old building, filling her head like 100 symphonies playing different tunes at once. For Adelaide, librarians were torturers, and each new one was worse than the last.